Hey everybody, we are looking at lessons 4 through 6 of the Functions and Parameters unit. We're going to finish this unit up and then have a nice easy spring break, and then we'll come back and move into animations when we return from spring break. Alright, so a couple things that we want to do. What I want you to do is I want you to go through the videos, of course, of CodeHS. So watch these videos. I'm going to talk about the examples and pseudocode a little bit as we go through. What we're covering in here are return functions. Okay, so this looks like a function that we just did. Okay, this was back in lesson 1. This was the exact same example that they gave us. However, the difference is what we've been doing is right here. We were doing a print line of double X. Okay, and so we would call our function, we'd come down here, we'd double it, and we would print it out. However, that's not what we're doing anymore, okay, for these. Now, we can still use these functions. These are regular functions that print and do everything that we need them to do. However, what we're doing this time is we are returning, okay? So, return, I don't need parentheses on this. I just need to write the word return. You see that it's a key word because it turned colors. And then what am I returning? I'm returning the answer that I'm getting. So here's how this works. I have a variable called number of num apples, and it is 4. So when I do a print line right here of before, and it just prints the number 4. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here, and you can see this line right here. This is my call to my function. So I'm calling double number, and I am sending in the number of apples. It goes into X. I come down here, doubled X equals 2 times X. And then I return the double. So I sent in the number 4, and I'm returning the number 8. So this return comes back, and it sends that value back up here and stores it in the call. So it's almost acting like a variable. So I have to do something with it. The biggest difference between a return function and a normal function is that when I have a return function, I have to store the call in a variable. And that is because I'm receiving a value back, and I have to put it in here. So anytime you make your call, it has to have a variable right here. Okay? So I'm creating twice as many. It is setting equal to the call, so that 8 comes back up here and gets stored in twice as many. So after our call, we now have 8. So when I run this, before I made my call, I had 4. After I made my call, I have 8. Okay? Now, one other way that I could have done this is I could take this value right here, copy it, and I could paste it inside my print line. And I'm going to get the same thing. So what I've done is, this time I skipped past the variable, but I put it inside the print line. Bottom line is I can do either of these, but I have to do something with the call. If I just, let's see, let me back this up. If I just do this, if I just make a call to it, like we did earlier, then nothing's going to happen. It's going to come down here. It is going to run this function. It is going to return something, but it's just going to sit here. Okay, so I have to do something with it. I can store it in a variable, or I can print it. And the biggest thing is it depends. Like right here, this is fine to print it. But if I needed to do something, let's say I go var double again equals double number, and now I'm going to send in twice as many. So I had to store it in a variable here so that I can use it again. And now I can go print line, third time, and say double again. So now I've doubled again up for a third time. Okay, so as we go through here, making sure we do that. Now the first two are square and triple with return values. These are exactly the same as the first two of lesson 1. However, you're using returns instead of printing in the function. We are not going to print in the function on any of these. For the gymnastics mat, there's a few things that you got to do right here. Okay, so this is the pseudocode for it. Calculate how many mats we'll need to fit in a room, given the dimensions of each mat and the dimensions of the room. And the start function asks the user for the dimensions of the mat. Boom. Asks for the mat width. Asks for the user for mat length. That was a typo. And then I'm going to call my function down here to do my math for me. I'm going to send in my mat width, my mat length in here. I'm going to calculate the area, and I'm going to return the value back up here and store it as a mat area. Then I can tell the user what the area of the mat is. Then ask for the room width and the room length. And then I'm going to call my function again, and I'm going to send in my room width and room length. I'm going to receive the area of the room, return it back up here, store it in a room area variable, tell the user what that is, and then use that mat area and room area to do the math, to figure out how many mats fit in the room. Okay? So ultimately, I am doing these lines of code, and I have just written the pseudocode of how to do it. This is very simple. It is just, how do you find the area if you have the width and length? You do the math, you return the answer. Okay? If you get stuck, please email me. Return values, one more thing, just one more time. This is just showing that I can send in multiple parameters. It doesn't matter how many parameters I send in. However, I only return one value. Now, one thing about a return function is, let's say I wanted to do a print line down here that just said my function is done. Okay, no big deal. And so then I run that, so we would think that I would receive the two values, I return it, and then I would say my function is done. But when I run it, I never print my function is done. The reason is a return shuts down a function just like a break shuts down a loop. So as soon as a return gets seen, then it returns the value and it does not do anything else in the function. So make sure that you understand that. The return needs to be the last thing in your function. Again, we're just sending in multiple things and returning values. Is even. Okay, so we want to write a function called isEven that returns a Boolean of whether or not a value is even or odd. The isEven function should not print anything out or return a number. It should only take in a number and return a Boolean. That's the big thing about this. It's kind of worded weird. We also want to have a loop and a half so that we can continually ask the user. So what we're going to do is we're going to start our loop and a half. Okay, if you don't remember, look back at lesson 10 of control structures. Then we're going to ask the user for a number. Then we are going to see if they gave us the sentinel. If they gave us a 0, actually I think it wants us to do that at the end. If you're getting an error, then just move your test down below this stuff. Sometimes the order just messes up. So we're going to test to see if they gave us a 0. If they did, then we're going to break out of our loop. Otherwise, we are going to make our call to our function, and we just stole this from over here. I'm going to send in my num that the user gave me. Then I'm going to see if this value is true. If it is, I print the word even. Otherwise, I print the word odd. In my function, I'm going to run my test to see if that value is even or odd. Remember how to do that. Look back at the caterpillar. Look back at the if, back in control structures, I believe lesson 3 or 4, There it shows you how to figure out if a number is even or odd using the modulus. So I'm going to run an if-else, testing if it's even or odd. If it's even, I return true. If it's otherwise, I return false. So again, this just returns true or false. Up here, I have another if-else statement that says if it was true, then the word even is printed, otherwise odd is printed. Okay, so just make sure you follow that along. And the last one, this one's pretty simple. Write a function called max that returns the maximum of two numbers. I just take the call, put it up here, I'm going to print x. And then down here, I receive an x and a y, and I return the bigger variable. Now remember, these can be anything. I could put a 10 and a 14 the first time. I could put 14 and 10 next time, and they could switch. I could put a 50 and a 100. I could put a 100 and a 50. So don't just return it. I'm going to have to do an if statement to figure out which one is bigger, and then return that value. Okay. I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please contact me, email me, let me help. Okay, have a good week, and it's almost fall break.